A group of seasoned hikers, deep in the Appalachian wilderness, set out on a journey that would become their last. Hours turned into darkness, and when no one returned, the search began. Days passed with nothing. Weeks later, the media gave up. Their names faded into the past. But 3 years later, a drone footage revealed something that made the cold case heat up again. What we discovered will leave you speechless. Are you ready to uncover the truth? They're not novices. These aren't casual weekend warriors who decided on a whim to tackle the wilderness. No, these are seasoned adventurers who know these mountains like the back of their hands. They've checked the weather, mapped their route, and left detailed plans with their families about when to expect them back. But as the sun dips below the horizon that evening, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange, something goes terribly, horrifically wrong. The designated pickup time comes and goes. Phone calls go unanswered. Text messages sit unread. The little blue check marks never appearing. And in the pit of every loved one's stomach, a cold dread begins to settle. Something is terribly, terribly wrong. Now, before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button if you're already feeling the tension building. Because what I'm about to share with you, this mystery, this tragedy, it's going to take you on a journey you won't believe. Let me introduce you to the 4 souls who walked into those mountains that day. Each one had their own story, their own reasons for being there, their own dreams they were chasing. First, there was Sarah and Michael Chen, a married couple in their mid-30s who had been together since college. They'd been through everything together: career changes, the loss of Michael's father, the joy of building their dream home in the valley. This hike was meant to be a celebration of their 10th wedding anniversary. No fancy restaurant, no expensive gifts, just them, the mountains they loved, and the simplicity of nature. Then there was Marcus Williams, a local outdoor guide who'd spent 15 years leading expeditions through these very trails. Marcus knew every switchback, every vista point, every hidden waterfall in a 50-mile radius. He'd mapped trails that weren't even in the official guidebooks. For Marcus, this particular hike was personal. He was reconnecting with the wilderness after losing his younger sister to cancer 6 months earlier. The mountains, he'd told his mother, were the only place he could still feel at peace. And finally, there was Elena Rodriguez, a solo adventurer who'd recently joined their hiking group online. She was a travel photographer from California, documenting the changing seasons across America's most beautiful landscapes. She'd driven 18 hours straight to capture the peak fall foliage in the Appalachians. Her Instagram followers, all 73,000 of them, were eagerly awaiting her latest photos. 4 people, 4 lives, 4 stories that were about to intertwine in the most tragic way imaginable. Are you still with me? Because this is where everything starts to unravel. The plan was simple: a 12-mile loop trail that would take them through old-growth forests, past a series of cascading waterfalls, and up to a ridge that offered panoramic views of the valley below. They'd started at 2 in the afternoon, planning to be back at the trailhead by 7 that evening, well before darkness set in. But 7 o'clock came and went, then 8, then 9. Sarah's sister, Jennifer, was the first to raise the alarm. She'd been waiting at the pickup point with hot coffee and sandwiches, expecting to hear animated stories about the day's adventure. Instead, she sat in her car, watching the parking lot remain empty, her calls going straight to voicemail. By 10 p.m., she'd contacted the local ranger station. The ranger, on duty that night, a grizzled veteran named Tom Hutchins, who'd been working these mountains for 27 years later, said he felt a chill run down his spine when he took that call. In all my years, he told reporters weeks later, I'd learned to trust my gut, and my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. Subscribe right now if you want to stay with this story. Because what happens next? The desperate search, the false leads, the heartbreak you won't want to miss a single moment. The first search party went out at dawn the next morning. Tom Hutchins led a team of 8 rangers, all equipped with radios, GPS devices, and emergency medical supplies. They followed the trail markers, calling out the hikers' names, their voices echoing through the forest. The vehicles were found almost immediately: Sarah and Michael's Subaru, Marcus's beaten-up Ford truck, and Elena's rental car, all parked exactly where they should be at the trailhead. The doors were locked. Nothing appeared disturbed. It was as if the four had simply vanished into thin air. But here's what made Tom's blood run cold. When they checked the trail register at the trailhead, there were no signatures. The last group to sign in had been 3 days earlier. Either the hikers had forgotten to sign in, which was unusual for experienced trekkers like Marcus, or something had prevented them from doing so. The first day of searching yielded nothing. No footprints off the main trail. No discarded water bottles. No torn clothing caught on branches. It was as if the forest had swallowed them whole. By day 2, the search had expanded. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors chopping through the air. Thermal imaging cameras scanning the dense canopy below. Search dogs, beautiful German shepherds trained to detect human scent, were brought in from 3 different counties. Volunteers from nearby towns showed up by the dozens, forming long lines that swept through the underbrush, calling out names until their voices went hoarse. And here's where it gets even more mysterious. Stay with me. Marcus's mother, Diane, spoke to reporters on day 3 of the search, her voice cracking with emotion. "My son knows these mountains better than anyone," she said, tears streaming down her weathered face. "If something happened, if they got hurt or lost, Marcus would know what to do. He would find a way to signal for help. The fact that we've heard nothing, it terrifies me." Michael's parents flew in from Seattle, their faces masks of barely controlled panic. They set up a command center at a local church, coordinating with volunteers, distributing flyers, managing the influx of tips and possible sightings that poured in from across the region. Elena's roommate in California started a social media campaign that went viral: Find the Appalachian 4. Within 48 hours, it had been shared over 200,000 times. Tips flooded in from people who claimed to have seen the group, but each lead turned into a dead end. A hiker reported seeing 4 people matching their description on a different trail system 20 miles away, but when investigators followed up, it turned out to be a completely different group. A gas station attendant swore he'd sold water bottles to a woman who looked like Elena, but the timestamp on the receipt was 2 hours before Elena had even arrived in the state. False hope is cruel. It lifts you up only to drop you harder than before. Share this video if you believe everyone deserves to know what happened, because the truth, when it finally comes, will shake you to your core. By the end of the first week, over 300 volunteers had participated in the search. They'd covered over 40 square miles of wilderness, checking caves, ravines, abandoned hunting cabins, and every conceivable hiding spot. Search dogs had followed scent trails that seemed promising, only to lose the trail at creek beds or rocky outcroppings. The local media descended on the small mountain town like a swarm. Reporters from national networks set up satellite trucks in the church parking lot. Sarah and Michael's wedding photo, that beautiful image of them laughing on a beach in Thailand, was splashed across every news channel. Marcus's guide certification photo, where he's standing proudly in his wilderness gear, became the image everyone associated with the mystery. Elena's Instagram profile, once a celebration of natural beauty, became a digital shrine where thousands left comments of hope and prayer. But as the days stretched into the second week, something shifted in the media coverage. The hopeful headlines, "Massive search continues for missing hikers," gradually transformed into something darker. "Hope fading for Appalachian 4," and "Wilderness swallows 4, without a trace." Tom Hutchins, the veteran ranger, held a press conference on day 12. His face was haggard, his eyes red from exhaustion. "We've done everything humanly possible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've deployed every resource, followed every lead, searched every square inch of the most likely areas. But the wilderness is vast, and sometimes..." Comment: "Never give up if you believe these families deserved more. Because I'm telling you right now, this story is far from over." And then there was a moment, a brief, shining moment, when hope flared back to life. On day 15, a GPS signal was detected. Weak, intermittent, but definitely there. It was coming from a device registered to Marcus Williams, emanating from a location approximately 8 miles northwest of the original trail. The search teams mobilized immediately, helicopters redirecting to the coordinates, ground teams pushing through dense undergrowth to reach the location. Jennifer, Sarah's sister, later described the 4-hour wait as the longest of her life. She sat in that church basement, surrounded by other family members, everyone holding their breath, praying that this would be the breakthrough they'd been desperately hoping for. But when the teams reached the coordinates, they found nothing. No hikers, no campsite, no signs of recent human activity, just a GPS device, lying in a shallow creek bed, its battery nearly dead, separated from its owner by unknown means. The device had been in that creek for days, possibly since the first day the group went missing. Water damage made it impossible to retrieve any data. There were no fingerprints, no DNA evidence that could tell them how it got there. Here's a lesson that's already emerging from this tragedy. When you're in the wilderness, technology can fail you. Always have backup plans, backup communication methods, and most importantly, always tell someone exactly where you're going. 3 weeks after the hikers disappeared, the official search was scaled back. The National Guard helicopters returned to their bases. The search dogs went home with their handlers. The volunteers, exhausted and heartbroken, returned to their normal lives. Only a skeleton crew of local rangers continued to patrol the area, now looking for bodies rather than survivors. The families were told in the gentlest terms possible to prepare for the worst. Diane Williams, Marcus's mother, refused to give up. She spent her own money hiring private search teams, psychics, anyone who claimed they could help. She mortgaged her house to pay for additional aerial surveys. "A mother knows," she told a local reporter. "And something in my heart tells me there's more to this story." But as autumn turned to winter, and the first snows blanketed the Appalachian peaks, the case grew cold in more ways than one. The families held a memorial service at the church on Thanksgiving, not a funeral, because there were no bodies to bury, but a gathering to honor 4 lives and hold on to the fading hope that somehow, someday, they might return. If you're still watching, thank you. Because what happens next, it's the reason I had to tell this story. The case became a local legend. In coffee shops and diners throughout the mountain towns, people whispered theories. Some said the group had been attacked by a black bear, though no evidence supported this. Others claimed they'd stumbled upon an illegal marijuana growing operation and been killed to protect the secret. The most outlandish theories involved government conspiracies and alien abductions. A local blogger named Travis McKenzie became obsessed with the case. He'd grown up in these mountains, had hiked the same trails the group had disappeared on dozens of times. Something about the official explanation that experienced hikers had simply vanished without a trace didn't sit right with him. Travis started his own investigation, creating a detailed website that mapped every known fact about the case. He interviewed family members, combed through the searchers' reports, and spent weekends hiking the trails himself, looking for any detail the professionals might have missed. His blog, The Truth About the Appalachian 4, gained a modest following. A few hundred people who refused to let the case die, who believed that somewhere out there, answers existed. Hit that like button if you believe the truth always finds a way to surface. Because after 6 months of silence, something extraordinary was about to happen. Spring arrived in the mountains, bringing with it the rebirth of the forest. Wildflowers pushed through the melting snow. Birds returned from their southern migrations, and life, as it always does, continued. In a small town about 30 miles from where the hikers disappeared, 2 college students named Jake Patterson and Melissa Torres had a new hobby. They were amateur drone enthusiasts, preparing for a regional drone photography competition. The contest had a specific challenge: capture the most stunning aerial footage of the Appalachian spring. On a Saturday morning in late April, they drove to a remote section of the mountain range, one that offered dramatic vistas and waterfalls swollen with snowmelt. They'd scouted the location online, using satellite imagery to plan their shots. Melissa launched their newest drone, a high-end quadcopter equipped with a 4K camera and GPS stabilization. The device hummed into the air, climbing above the tree line, its camera capturing the breathtaking landscape below. What happened next would change everything. Everything. Jake was piloting the drone, guiding it along a ridge line, when Melissa noticed something on the monitor. "Wait," she said, grabbing his arm. "Go back." Down in that ravine, Jake maneuvered the drone back, lowering it toward a narrow gorge that cut deep into the mountainside. The camera's gimbal adjusted, bringing the image into sharp focus. There, partially concealed by vines and early spring vegetation, was something metallic. Something that didn't belong in nature. "Is that a backpack?" Melissa whispered. They zoomed in closer. The object was definitely man-made. A hiking pack. Its blue fabric faded, but still visible beneath the growth. Next to it, partially buried in leaves and dirt, were other items. A water bottle, what looked like a tarp or tent material. Jake's hands were shaking so badly he almost crashed the drone. They'd both heard about the missing hikers everyone in the region had. Could this be? They captured as much footage as they could, marking the GPS coordinates carefully, then immediately drove to the nearest ranger station. Subscribe right now if you want to see where this discovery leads. Because the investigation is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. Tom Hutchins was 3 months from retirement when Jake and Melissa burst into the ranger station with their laptop, practically vibrating with excitement. When he saw the footage, his heart nearly stopped. Within an hour, he'd assembled a team. Within 3 hours, they were hiking toward the coordinates, carrying specialized recovery equipment. The ravine was in a section of wilderness they'd searched months earlier, but it was deep, treacherous, and had been deemed too dangerous for extensive ground searches during the winter months. The trek to the location took nearly 4 hours of difficult hiking. The ravine wasn't visible from any established trail, you had to know exactly where to look, and even then, it was hidden by thick vegetation and the natural contours of the land. When they finally reached the site and rappelled down into the gorge, what they found made even the most experienced rangers fall silent. It wasn't just a backpack, it was a campsite, and what they discovered at that campsite would rewrite everything everyone thought they knew about this case. The scene was both heartbreaking and puzzling. A small tent, collapsed and weathered, was set up against the ravine wall. Around it, carefully arranged, were the possessions of the 4 hikers: backpacks, water bottles, a camp stove, a map still protected in a waterproof case. Everything was there, laid out almost deliberately, as if someone had been organizing a camp, but there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, no obvious indication of what had happened. Tom Hutchins, his hands encased in evidence gloves, carefully photographed everything before touching a single item. The state police were called in. Forensic experts made the journey to the ravine. What had started as a missing persons case was now officially a potential crime scene. Among the items recovered was a survival knife, a high-quality blade with a custom leather sheath. Etched into the handle were the initials M.W., Marcus Williams. But here's what made investigators pause. Marcus's family had never mentioned him carrying such a knife. It wasn't in the original inventory of his equipment. Where had it come from, and why had it been left behind? The discovery that made everyone's blood run cold came when they found Elena Rodriguez's phone. It was in a hidden pocket of her backpack, wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from moisture. Despite months of exposure to the elements, the waterproofing had held. The phone was dead, its battery long drained, but the device itself was intact. Share this video if you believe every clue matters. Because what was on that phone, it would crack this case wide open. The phone was taken to a specialized forensic lab in Washington, D.C. Experts spent 3 days recovering data from the device, carefully extracting information without destroying any evidence. What they found painted a picture that nobody had anticipated. The last photos on Elena's phone were taken on the day the group disappeared. They showed the hikers smiling at a scenic overlook, Sarah and Michael with their arms around each other, Marcus pointing to something in the distance, Elena's selfie, the golden light of the setting sun illuminating her face. But the timestamps told a different story than anyone had expected. These photos were taken at 5:47 p.m. later than the group should have been at that particular overlook if they were following their planned route. They'd gone off trail. But why? The phone's GPS data was even more revealing. The device had tracked Elena's location until approximately 6:23 p.m., when it appeared to have been turned off manually. The last recorded position was at the ravine where the campsite was found. But here's what didn't make sense. If the group had made it to the ravine and set up camp, why hadn't they called for help? Elena's phone had signal at that location. She could have dialed 911. She could have texted for help. But there was no record of any outgoing calls or messages after 4:15 p.m. that afternoon. Can you feel the mystery deepening? Comment, something's not right if you're starting to question everything we thought we knew. The investigation took on new urgency. Detective Sarah Martinez from the state police was assigned to lead the case. She was known for her meticulous approach and her refusal to accept easy answers. She started by re-interviewing everyone connected to the case. Family members, friends, other hikers who'd been in the area that day, the ranger who'd been on duty at the station. And then, she made a breakthrough. During a conversation with Marcus's hiking buddy, a man named David Chen, who'd been too sick to join the group, that fateful day she learned something that hadn't been in any of the original reports. Marcus had been having problems with a local resident named Ray Tanner, a man who claimed to own hunting rights to portions of the land the hiking trail crossed. It wasn't anything serious, David told her. Just some arguments about access rights. Ray was old school, thought the whole mountain should be off limits to anyone who wasn't local. He'd confronted Marcus a few times, told him to keep his tourist groups out of his woods. Ray Tanner. The name had never come up in the original investigation. This is where everything starts to come together. Stay with me, we're getting close to the truth. Detective Martinez ran a background check on Ray Tanner. What she found was disturbing. Tanner was a 58-year-old former military man who'd moved to the mountains 15 years earlier. He lived in a remote cabin about 5 miles from the trail system, surviving on a military pension and income from illegal poaching, though he'd only been caught and fined once, 3 years prior. Neighbors described him as paranoid and territorial. He'd run off other hikers before, though always with threats rather than violence. But those who knew him well said he'd been getting worse in recent years, more aggressive, more unstable. 2 park rangers reported that Tanner had confronted them months earlier, claiming that hikers were destroying the wilderness and that someone needed to teach them a lesson. Martinez obtained a warrant to search Tanner's property. What they found there would finally bring the truth into the light. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with this story, because what I'm about to tell you, it's the hardest part. Ray Tanner's cabin was exactly what you'd expect from a man living on the edge of society. Isolated, run down, surrounded by handmade, no trespassing signs. When police arrived with the warrant, Tanner was nowhere to be found. Inside the cabin, investigators discovered a disturbing collection. Maps of all the local hiking trails, with certain sections circled in red marker. A journal filled with paranoid rants about city people destroying his mountains. And photographs, dozens of photographs of hikers taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Among those photographs were several of the 4 missing hikers. Pictures of them at the trailhead on the day they disappeared. Images of them hiking up the trail, unaware they were being watched. The most damning evidence was found in Tanner's truck, parked behind the cabin. Forensic examination revealed traces of DNA belonging to Marcus Williams on the passenger seat. A torn piece of fabric that matched Sarah Chen's jacket, and a detailed topographical map with a handwritten route marked in pen, a route that led directly to the ravine where the campsite had been found. Comment, justice must be served if you believe Ray Tanner needs to answer for what he did. For 3 days, law enforcement searched for Ray Tanner. An APB went out across 3 states. His photo was on every news channel. Tips poured in, but each lead went nowhere. Until a deer hunter found him. Tanner's body was discovered in a crude shelter he'd built about 12 miles from his cabin, deep in the wilderness he'd claimed to protect. He'd taken his own life, leaving behind a handwritten note that finally revealed the truth. The letter was rambling, bitter, and unapologetic. But it told the story. According to Tanner's account, he'd encountered the 4 hikers on the afternoon they disappeared. He'd been checking his illegal trap lines when he spotted them on a trail he considered his territory. An argument ensued. Tanner claimed they'd threatened to report his poaching activities to authorities. In his twisted logic, he'd decided to teach them a lesson about respecting the wilderness. He'd pulled a gun, a hunting rifle he'd been carrying, and forced them to hike deeper into the mountains, away from the established trails, to the remote ravine. This next part, I need you to understand how devastating this was for the families. If you need to pause the video, do so. This is the hardest truth to bear. Tanner had intended, he wrote, to hold them overnight, to scare them, to make them understand that outsiders weren't welcome in his mountains. He forced them to set up camp in the ravine, took their phones and GPS devices, and told them he'd let them go in the morning if they promised never to return. But according to his letter, something went wrong during the night. He'd been drinking heavily, had fallen asleep. When he woke before dawn, he found that Marcus Williams had somehow freed himself and attacked Tanner in an attempt to disarm him. In the struggle, Tanner claimed it was self-defense. Though his words reeked of lies and justification, the rifle discharged. Marcus was killed instantly. The others, Sarah, Michael, and Elena, had tried to run. In his rage and panic, Tanner hunted them through the darkness. He was military trained, knew the terrain, had night vision equipment. They didn't stand a chance. By the time the sun rose, all 4 were dead. Hit the like button if you believe no family should ever have to hear news like this. Because what happened next broke hearts across the nation. Tanner's letter described how he'd spent the following weeks hiding the bodies, moving them one by one to an even more remote location, a cave system he'd discovered years earlier, one not marked on any official maps. He'd covered the entrance with rocks and debris, making it virtually impossible to find without knowing exactly where to look. The letter included crude directions, more out of spite than remorse. It was as if, even in death, he wanted to demonstrate how completely he'd outsmarted the search teams, how thoroughly he'd hidden his crime. Based on these directions, a recovery team was assembled. The mission took 6 days. The cave system was treacherous, requiring experienced spelunkers and specialized equipment to access safely. But they found them, all 4. Sarah and Michael Chen, Marcus Williams, Elena Rodriguez. 6 months after they'd set out for a simple afternoon hike, they were finally coming home. The family's grief was immeasurable. How do you process such loss? How do you accept that someone you loved died not from an accident, not from a natural disaster, but from the deliberate actions of a paranoid, hateful man who believed his twisted sense of territory justified murder? Subscribe if you believe their memory deserves to be honored, because their story, as tragic as it is, carries lessons we all need to hear. The memorial service was held on a beautiful summer day. Hundreds of people attended, family members, friends, fellow hikers, and complete strangers who'd followed the case and felt connected to these 4 souls they'd never met. Sarah and Michael were buried side by side, their headstones featuring an image of them on a mountain summit, their favorite place. Marcus was laid to rest in the same cemetery as his sister, reunited in death as his mother had always prayed they would be. Elena's ashes were scattered across 3 locations in California where she was born, in the Appalachians where she fell in love with photography, and in her grandmother's village in Mexico, honoring her heritage. During the service, each person's life was celebrated, not as victims, but as vibrant, passionate individuals who'd had the courage to seek adventure and beauty in the world. Travis McKenzie, the blogger who'd kept the case alive during its darkest months, spoke about the importance of never giving up on the truth. These 4 people mattered, he said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. Their lives mattered, and the truth about what happened to them mattered. We must never let tragedy be forgotten or explained away. We owe it to them and to ourselves to demand answers. But here's something I need you to understand. Something that comes from Marcus's mother, Diane. who showed a strength that left everyone in awe. Diane Williams stood at her son's grave and spoke words that echoed far beyond that moment. "My son loved these mountains," she said. "They brought him peace, joy, and purpose." What happened to him, what happened to all four of them? It wasn't the wilderness that betrayed them. It was one sick, broken man who let his hatred consume him. She paused, looking out at the gathered crowd. "Please don't let this tragedy make you fear the wilderness. Don't let Ray Tanner's evil poison the beauty that exists in nature. Instead, let this be a reminder that we must look out for each other, protect each other, and never let our guard down when it comes to safety." Her words became a rallying cry. Within months, new safety protocols were implemented across the Appalachian trail system and in wilderness areas throughout the region. Trail registers became mandatory at every major trailhead, with rangers checking them regularly. Emergency beacon rental programs were established for hikers who couldn't afford their own devices. Cell phone repeaters were installed in key locations to improve signal coverage, and most importantly, a new alert system was created if hikers didn't check in within 2 hours of their expected return time. Search protocols would automatically be initiated. These changes were named the Appalachian 4 Safety Initiative, a living memorial to Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena. Share this video if you believe something good can come from even the darkest tragedy. Among the recovered items from the cave was something that brought both tears and comfort to the families. Marcus had kept a journal during those final, terrifying hours. The entries were brief, written in darkness by flashlight, but they revealed the courage and humanity of all four in their final moments. "Sarah is singing softly to keep our spirits up," he wrote. "Even now, even knowing what's coming, she's trying to take care of all of us." Michael won't leave her side. They're holding hands, whispering to each other. I hear him telling her about all the adventures they'll have when we get out of here. Elena keeps saying her mother's name, over and over like a prayer. "We're going to try again at dawn. We're going to fight. We're not giving up." But the most heartbreaking entry was the last one. "If someone finds this, please tell our families we love them. Tell them we fought. Tell them we never stopped hoping. And tell them not to let this one evil man represent the mountains we loved. The wilderness was never our enemy. Only the darkness in one man's heart." Elena's roommate compiled her photographs, the ones she'd taken that day and the thousands she'd captured throughout her travels, into a memorial book. All proceeds went to a scholarship fund for aspiring wilderness photographers. Sarah and Michael's family established a grant program for couples planning honeymoon adventures in national parks. Marcus's hiking company, which had shut down after his death, was revived by his former employees and continues to lead safe, responsible treks through the Appalachians. Their lives, though cut short, continued to create ripples of positivity and change. Now, before we close this chapter of the story, I made you a promise at the beginning. I told you there were lessons to be learned, practical steps that could prevent another tragedy like this one. So, let me share with you 5 critical lessons, 5 things that could save your life or the life of someone you love when venturing into the wilderness. First, and this cannot be emphasized enough, always inform someone of your exact route and expected return time. Not a general area, not, "We're going hiking." Provide specific trail names, GPS coordinates if possible, and a time when, if you haven't checked in, they should immediately contact authorities. Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena did this, and while it didn't save them from Ray Tanner's evil, it did mean their families knew exactly where to focus search efforts. In cases of genuine accidents or getting lost, this single action saves lives every single year. Second, carry a GPS device and extra batteries. Your phone's GPS is good, but a dedicated GPS beacon with an emergency SOS function is better. These devices can send distress signals even when you have no cell service. They can pinpoint your location within meters and automatically notify rescue services. Marcus had one, but Tanner confiscated it immediately. If each member of your group has their own device, hidden in different packs, the chances of an assailant getting all of them decreases dramatically. Are you writing these down? Comment, life-saving lessons. If these tips are making you rethink your wilderness safety protocols. Third, keep a detailed emergency kit that includes items specifically chosen for survival situations. A survival knife, yes, like the one Marcus had, but also a whistle. A mirror for signaling, waterproof matches, a fire starter, a basic first aid kit with trauma supplies, and emergency bivy bags. These items should be distributed among your group members, so no single pack contains everything. Elena's photography bag contained emergency flares, but they were buried under her camera equipment, inaccessible when Tanner forced them to move quickly. Keep emergency items in easy-to-reach exterior pockets. Fourth, learn basic wilderness survival skills before you need them. Fire starting isn't just about matches and lighters. Can you start a fire with friction methods if needed? Shelter building isn't just about tents. Can you construct an emergency shelter from natural materials? Water purification. Basic navigation using landmarks and the sun. Recognizing edible plants versus poisonous ones. Treating injuries in the field, these skills can mean the difference between life and death. Marcus knew all of this, and according to his journal entries, he'd use those skills to help keep the group alive as long as possible under impossible circumstances. And fifth, never, ever hike alone in unfamiliar, remote areas. There is genuine safety in numbers, but not just for the obvious reasons. Yes, if one person gets injured, others can go for help. But equally important, multiple people can watch out for threats that a solo hiker might miss. If Elena had been alone that day, she might have noticed Tanner following her earlier. If there'd been 5 or 6 hikers instead of 4, Tanner might have been too intimidated to approach at all. Predators, whether animal or human, typically target isolated, vulnerable individuals. But here's an additional lesson that came directly from Detective Martinez during a safety workshop she now conducts regularly. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Marcus had mentioned in messages to his mother the week before that he'd had an uneasy feeling about Ray Tanner. He'd considered reporting Tanner's threatening behavior, but had decided it wasn't serious enough to warrant official action. Elena had noted in her journal 2 days before the hike that she'd felt like someone was watching her while she was photographing a waterfall. She'd dismissed it as paranoia. Our instincts are honed by millions of years of evolution. When your gut says something is wrong, don't rationalize it away. Report suspicious behavior to authorities. Change your route if something feels off. Leave the area if another person makes you uncomfortable. Being rude is better than being dead. The Appalachian 4 tragedy also led to a broader conversation about mental health resources in rural communities. Ray Tanner had shown signs of deteriorating mental health for years, but in the isolated mountain community where he lived, there were no accessible mental health services, no intervention programs, no way for concerned neighbors to get him help even if they'd wanted to. Communities across Appalachia have since established better mental health outreach programs. Crisis intervention teams that include wilderness areas in their patrol routes, and anonymous tip lines for reporting concerning behavior. Hit that subscribe button if you believe we all have a responsibility to watch out for each other, both in the wilderness and in our communities. 1 year after the bodies were recovered, the families of the Appalachian 4 gathered at the trailhead where their loved ones had begun their final hike. They unveiled a memorial plaque, a simple bronze marker with the 4 names and a message. In memory of 4 souls who loved the wilderness: Sarah Chen, Michael Chen, Marcus Williams, Elena Rodriguez. They walked these trails with joy, respect, and wonder. May we honor their memory by protecting both the wilderness they loved and the fellow travelers who walk these paths. Be safe. Be prepared. Be vigilant. And may the mountains bring you peace. Attached to the marker are 4 small metal boxes, each containing trail maps, emergency contact information, and small emergency kits available free to any hiker who needs them. Thousands of hikers have taken advantage of these resources, and multiple people have credited them with helping in emergencies. Tom Hutchins, who retired 6 months after the bodies were recovered, volunteers to maintain the memorial, and restock the emergency boxes. "It's the least I can do," he says. "Those four deserved better. We all failed them in some way. Now, it's about making sure we don't fail anyone else." The investigation into Ray Tanner's background revealed more disturbing details. His military service had ended with a dishonorable discharge after multiple violent incidents. He'd moved from state to state, leaving a trail of restraining orders and assault charges, always staying just below the threshold that would have landed him in prison. The system had failed to track him, to intervene, to recognize the danger he posed. New legislation was proposed, Marcus's Law, requiring better coordination between states in tracking individuals with histories of violent behavior, particularly when they relocate to remote areas. While the law faced opposition and didn't pass in its original form, modified versions were adopted in several states, improving public safety monitoring in wilderness communities. You've stayed with this story for a long time now, and I want to thank you for that. Because stories like this, as painful as they are, they need to be told. They need to be remembered. Elena's 73,000 Instagram followers became part of a movement. They started sharing wilderness safety tips, promoting responsible hiking practices, and fundraising for search and rescue organizations. Her account, now managed by her family as a memorial, has grown to over 200,000 followers. Every post includes both a beautiful nature photograph from her archives and a practical safety tip. Elena would love that her passion for photography is being used to keep people safe, her mother said during an interview. She always said the wilderness was meant to be enjoyed, but also respected. She understood the dangers, but she never let fear stop her from pursuing beauty. That's the balance we all need to find. The married couple, Sarah and Michael, left behind a partially finished manuscript for a book they'd been writing together about finding adventure in everyday life. Their families worked with a professional editor to complete the book, which was published under the title Together in the Wild, A Love Letter to Nature and Each Other. It became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to wilderness conservation efforts. The book's final chapter, written by their families, included a powerful message. Sarah and Michael believe that life's greatest adventures are best shared with someone you love. They believe that nature has the power to heal, to inspire, to transform. They believe that every sunset was worth chasing, every mountain worth climbing, every trail worth exploring. They were right about all of it. The only thing they couldn't have known was that evil could hide even in the places they found the most beautiful. So we share their story not to spread fear, but to spread awareness. Love boldly, adventure freely, but never, ever, let your guard down completely. Comment, their legacy lives on, if you've been moved by this story. Because that's ultimately what this is about. Making sure these four incredible people are remembered not just as victims, but as the adventurous, loving, passionate individuals they were. 5 years have now passed since that terrible autumn day when four hikers set out on what should have been a routine trail. The Appalachian 4 Safety Initiative has expanded to over 50 wilderness areas across 15 states. The emergency protocols established in their memory have been activated hundreds of times, leading to successful rescues in cases where hikers got lost, injured, or stranded by weather. According to search and rescue statistics, response times have improved by an average of 43% in areas where these protocols have been implemented. Dozens of lives have been saved by the systems put in place to honor Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena. Travis McKenzie, the blogger who helped keep the case alive, went on to create a non-profit organization called Never Forgotten, the Wilderness Safety Project. The organization maintains a database of missing persons cases in wilderness areas, provides resources for families navigating the search and rescue system, and advocates for better safety infrastructure in remote recreational areas. Every missing person deserves the same attention, the same resources, the same commitment to finding answers that the Appalachian 4 eventually received. Travis explained during a TED Talk that went viral. It shouldn't have taken 6 months and a random drone flight to bring them home. We need to do better. And we are doing better. One trail system at a time. The drone enthusiasts who made the initial discovery, Jake and Melissa, used the reward money they received from the families to establish a program teaching search and rescue teams how to effectively use drone technology in wilderness searches. Their work has revolutionized how searches are conducted, allowing teams to cover vastly more territory in less time and with greater precision. "We just happened to be in the right place at the right time," Jake said modestly. But what we learned from that experience is that technology, when used properly, can save lives. Every search and rescue team should have access to high-quality drones and people trained to use them effectively. Melissa added, "We'll never forget the weight of that moment when we realized what we'd found. It changed us. It changed what we do with our lives. Now, every time our drones help find someone, whether it's a lost child, an injured hiker, or someone who didn't make it home, we think of Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena. We're doing this work for them." Share this video if you believe technology and human compassion can combine to make the wilderness safer for everyone who seeks its beauty. Diane Williams, Marcus's mother, now leads grief counseling groups for families of people who've gone missing in wilderness areas. Her strength and grace in the face of unimaginable loss have helped dozens of other families navigate their own dark journeys. Grief never truly ends. She often tells the families she works with, but it transforms. It changes from a sharp, consuming pain into something you carry with you, something that becomes part of who you are. Marcus is with me every day. I see him in every sunset, every mountain peak, every hiker who stops to check their map. His love for the wilderness became my motivation to make that wilderness safer. That's how we honor those we've lost. We transform our pain into purpose. She's also been a vocal advocate for improved mental health services in rural communities, speaking at legislative hearings and working with mental health organizations to expand access to care. "If Ray Tanner had received proper mental health care," she said, "if someone had intervened in his deteriorating condition, maybe my son would still be alive." We can't change the past, but we can absolutely change how we approach mental health care in isolated communities going forward. The families have also established an annual memorial hike, held every autumn on the anniversary of the day Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena disappeared. Hundreds of hikers participate, walking together along the same trails the four had planned to complete. It's a celebration of life, a commitment to safety, and a powerful reminder that the wilderness belongs to all of us. At the end of the hike, participants gather at the memorial plaque. Names of all wilderness victims from the past year are read aloud. Moments of silence are observed. And then, in a tradition that began spontaneously the first year and has continued ever since, someone starts singing "Take Me Home, Country Roads," Sarah's favorite song according to her sister. By the time the chorus arrives, everyone is singing together, their voices carrying across the mountains, a defiant declaration that love and community will always be stronger than fear and hatred. If you're still here with me, I want you to know something. This story, this terrible, heartbreaking, but ultimately meaningful story, it matters. Every view, every like, every share helps ensure that Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena are never forgotten. It helps spread the safety lessons that could save someone's life. It helps build awareness about the importance of mental health care, community vigilance, and wilderness safety. So, let me bring this all together, because I made you a promise at the beginning of this journey. I told you this story would be emotional, that it would invest you in the lives of four people you'd never met. I told you there would be lessons, practical things you could use to protect yourself and your loved ones. But more than that, I hope I've shown you that even in the darkest moments, even when evil seems to triumph, the human spirit endures. The love that Sarah and Michael shared, the peace that Marcus found in the mountains, the artistic vision that drove Elena to capture beauty wherever she went, none of that died with them. It lives on in every hiker who clips an emergency beacon to their pack. It lives on in every family who checks in with their loved ones before setting out on an adventure. It lives on in every search and rescue volunteer who gives their time to help strangers in need. Ray Tanner took 4 lives. That's the terrible truth. But he didn't take their legacy. He didn't diminish their impact. And in the end, his name is a footnote in a story that's really about courage, love, community, and the relentless human drive to create meaning from tragedy. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. I don't take that lightly. Your time is valuable, and you chose to spend it hearing this story. That means something. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I cover cases like this, mysteries, tragedies, stories that need to be told, and your subscription helps me continue doing this work. Every subscriber, every view, it all makes a difference. Hit the like button if this story moved you, if you learned something, if you believe these 4 people deserve to have their story told with respect and dignity. And please, please share this video. Share it with your hiking friends. Share it with your family members who love the outdoors. Share it with anyone who needs to understand that safety isn't paranoia, it's love in action. Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Tell me if you've had your own experiences with wilderness safety. Tell me if you've learned something from this story. Tell me how you're going to honor the memory of the Appalachian 4. I read every single comment and I reply to as many as I can, because this isn't just me talking at you. It's us. Together, creating a community that cares about truth, about safety, about honoring those we've lost. And now, before I let you go, I want to leave you with the final words from Marcus Williams' journal, the last thing he wrote before his flashlight died and he faced the darkness. To whoever finds this, the wilderness is not evil. It is beautiful, sacred, and worthy of respect. What happened to us was not nature's fault. It was one man's choice. Don't let our story make you fear the mountains. Instead, let it make you wiser, more prepared, more vigilant. Let it make you appreciate every moment of beauty you witness, every sunrise you see, every peak you summit. Live boldly. Love deeply. Respect the wilderness and respect each other. And please, please tell our families we never stopped fighting, we never stopped hoping, and we never stopped loving them. The mountains gave us so much joy. Don't let this one tragedy overshadow all that beauty. We wouldn't want that. We'd want you to hike on. That's the legacy of the Appalachian 4. Not fear, not tragedy, but wisdom, preparation, and an unshakable appreciation for the beauty that exists in our world. So go ahead. Plan that hike you've been dreaming about. Take your family to see those mountains. Chase that sunset. Capture that perfect photograph. Just do it wisely. Do it safely. Do it with the lessons we've learned from Sarah, Michael, Marcus, and Elena guiding your every step. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And until the next video, take care of yourselves and each other. The wilderness is waiting. And when you approach it with respect, preparation, and wisdom, it has miracles to show you. I'll see you in the next one.